I'm not sure a sentient system is a good thing. We've all seen that movie, haven't we? Now you can reach me on Twitter. I'm at BBC Mariam. You're watching the BBC. Stay with us. Plenty more to come.
Hello, this is Impact. I'm Yalda Hakim. More than 5,000 people are now known to have died after the devastating earthquakes in Turkey and Syria. There's a scramble to find survivors. A little girl buried in the rubble of a collapsed apartment block is freed, but hopes are fading of finding others alive.
Every minute, every hour that passes, the chances of finding survivors alive diminishes.
Also on the programme, we'll have comprehensive coverage including updates and analysis from our correspondents and bring you live pictures and interviews from the region. Specialist rescue teams arrive in Turkey to help local authorities to try and find those who remain trapped. That's all coming up here on Impact. Welcome to the programme. More than 5,000 people are known to have been killed by the devastating earthquakes which struck Syria and Turkey on Monday. Many more of the survivors have been injured, with some now homeless amid freezing conditions. Rescue teams and local residents are continuing attempts to free people who are now trapped under the rubble of collapsed buildings, with some crying out in pain for help. Dozens of countries are promising aid. We can speak now to Timothy Whiting. He was on holiday in Hatay when the earthquake struck. He managed to escape the guest house he was staying in and joins us now live from Adana. Thank you very much, Timothy, for joining us here on the programme. In fact, you are feeling some aftershocks right now. Can you tell us about those? Yeah, and of course the aftershocks continue as well. Anna, thank you so much for bringing us up to date there from Marash. Stay with us here on Impact. Still to come, continuing live coverage of this deadly powerful earthquake, and one of the main challenges faced by the search and rescue teams is the weather. We'll have much more coming up in the next few minutes. This is Impact on BBC World News. I'm Yalda Hakim. More now of the devastating earthquakes that have hit Turkey and Syria. For an update on all of today's developments, our correspondent Richard Galpin with the latest. That was Tom Bateman reporting there from Adana. And just an update, the UN has said that the flow of vital aid into northwest Syria has been temporarily halted due to badly damaged roads and other logistical problems caused by the earthquakes. There is currently only one land crossing into the opposition-held areas. There have been more than 800 deaths in Idlib province alone. The Syrian government blocks aid to rebel-controlled regions. Germany's foreign minister has called on countries around the world, including Syria's ally Russia, to put pressure on the Damascus regime to allow aid to reach all earthquake-hit areas there. In Turkey, almost 14,000 people have already joined the rescue effort, including several thousand personnel from 65 countries. You're looking at live pictures there of Gaziantep, which was near the epicenter of that 7.8 magnitude quake, which struck in the early hours of Monday while people were asleep. We're going to have much more in the next edition of Impact, so don't go anywhere. We'll leave you with these devastating pictures of Gaziantep. Hello, this is Impact. I'm Yalda Hakim. More than 5,000 people are now known to have died in the devastating earthquakes that have struck Turkey and Syria. There's a scramble to find survivors. A little girl buried in the rubble of a collapsed apartment block is freed, but hopes are fading of finding others alive.
Every minute, every hour that passes, the chances of finding survivors alive diminishes.
Turkish President Erdogan declares a 3-month state of emergency in 10 provinces hit by the earthquakes. That's all coming up here on Impact. Welcome to the programme. More than 5,000 people are known to have been killed by 2 devastating earthquakes which struck Syria and Turkey yesterday. Many more of the survivors have been injured, with some now homeless in freezing conditions. Rescue teams and local residents are continuing attempts to free people who are now trapped under the rubble of collapsed buildings, with some crying out in pain for help. Well, our Middle East correspondent Tom Bateman is in the city of Iskenderun, where the relief effort has been continuing. And Tom, I know Iskenderun is badly devastated, like so many other parts of the southern parts of Turkey. Okay, Professor Tony Redman, founder of UK Med, thank you so much for joining us here on the programme and for the work that you and your teams do.
Thank you.
Stay with us here on Impact. Still to come, a 3-month state of emergency is declared in 10 provinces hit by the earthquakes by Turkish President Erdogan. This is Impact on BBC World News. I'm Yalda Hakim. A reminder of our top story: the death toll from Monday's devastating earthquakes in Syria and Turkey has soared past 5,000, with thousands more feared injured or trapped. The Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan said 70 countries have offered help in search and rescue operations. He's declared a 3-month state of emergency in the affected provinces. I'm joined now by Dr. Afshin Shahi, Senior Lecturer in Middle Eastern Studies at the University of Kiel. Thank you very much, Dr. Shahi, for joining us here on the programme. We've been talking here today about the complexities of the situation, especially in Syria. The situation between the two countries couldn't be more further apart. Turkey does seem to have some kind of organised plan, but for Syria, it's a completely devastated situation.
To paint these very
unfortunately,
scenes.
I'm so sorry to cut you off, Taco. We're unfortunately running out of time, but thank you so much for joining us here on the programme. We'll have much more on the earthquake from Turkey and Syria in the next few minutes, so don't go anywhere. Hello, this is Impact. I'm Yalda Hakim. More than 5,000 people are now known to have died after the devastating earthquakes in Turkey and Syria. There's a scramble to find survivors. A little girl buried in the rubble of a collapsed apartment block is freed, but hopes are fading of finding others alive.
Every minute, every hour that passes, the chances of finding survivors alive diminishes.
Also on the programme, we'll have comprehensive coverage including updates and analysis from our correspondents and bring you live pictures and interviews from the region. Specialist rescue teams arrive in Turkey to help local authorities to try and find those who remain trapped. That's all coming up here on Impact. Welcome back to the programme. The World Health Organization says that around 23 million people could be affected by Monday's powerful earthquakes in Turkey and Syria. The number of people known to have died has risen to more than 5,000, with many more injured and an unknown number still missing, potentially buried under collapsed buildings. The effort to rescue them and care for survivors is being hampered by two factors: harsh winter weather and a series of powerful aftershocks. A huge international aid effort is getting underway, but time is increasingly a factor. We begin our coverage this hour with this report on the latest developments from Richard Galpin. That was Timothy Whiting speaking to me there a little earlier. Stay with us here on Impact, still to come. Continuing live coverage on these deadly powerful earthquakes, we'll be looking at the challenges faced by rescue workers operating in northern Syria, a region impacted by years of conflict. Stay with us. This is Impact on BBC World News. I'm Yalda Hakim. More now on the devastating earthquakes that have struck Turkey and Syria. And we can focus on northern Syria now, where the rescue effort is being hampered by the impact of years of military and political conflict. Some of the territory is in rebel hands outside the control of President Assad's government forces. And in those areas, years of conflict that has destroyed basic facilities, including hospitals. The civilian emergency response group who operates in rebel areas, the White Helmets, said time is running out. Earlier this morning, there was a moment of joy as rescue teams pulled a young girl out alive from the rubble of a collapsed building on Tuesday. Murad, thank you so much for giving us a better picture of the situation there in Syria. We are following developments in Turkey and Syria very closely. Let's leave you with these pictures of southern Turkey with those emergency workers standing on the rubble, trying desperately to help people get out. We'll see you shortly. This is BBC World News. I'm Yalda Hakim. The headlines. The United Nations has said it fears thousands of children may have died in the devastating earthquakes which struck southern Turkey and northern Syria yesterday. The number of people confirmed to have died is now more than 5,000. Rescue teams are trying to reach survivors trapped in the rubble of thousands of collapsed buildings. Some estimates suggest hundreds of people could still be trapped under collapsed buildings. The World Health Organization has warned the number of dead could rise to about 20,000 in the coming days. The WHO chief said they are mobilizing emergency supplies to the affected areas. Help has begun arriving in Turkey from across the world, although Syria is a lot more difficult to access. Aid and rescue teams from Germany, Israel, India, Spain, Romania and Serbia are in the country. And they're all your latest headlines here on BBC World News.
Now on BBC World News, the latest business news from across the globe. World Business Report.
Windfall in the oil sector. BP is the latest firm to more than double its profits. But are they investing enough to transition to a greener future? And tensions over clean tech subsidies. EU ministers are in Washington, hoping to iron out concerns over the Inflation Reduction Act. Hello to you, this is World Business Report. I'm Ben Thompson and we start this hour with, yes, another day and another oil major that's reported major profits. This time the energy giant BP has record numbers following the surge in energy prices that was brought on by Russia's war in Ukraine. Well, the company says it made profits of $27.7 billion. That is more than double the year before. And of course, that comes just days after Shell announced it made record profits. It came in at nearly $40 billion. billion. That is the highest in its 115-year history. Well, for more on this, let's speak to Bill Farron-Price. He leads the macro oil intelligence team at the energy intelligence company Enverus, and they provide research and data to lots of top oil companies. Thank you for being with us, and talk to me a little bit first of all about this. No huge surprise, once again an oil firm coming up with some record numbers. It's been driven by that war in Ukraine. Of course, we're all paying more for energy right now, but talk to me about what BP's done here. Yeah, and we're going to talk about that Inflation Reduction Act a little later in the programme. But for now, Bill, thanks very much. Bill Farron-Price there at Enverus. Well, we'll come on to the IRA a little later, but we're going to talk about big tech and the new front line in the world of chatbots. You might have heard about Microsoft's artificial intelligence-powered one. It's called ChatGPT. It's been wowing users with its ability to mimic human writing on demand, from things like writing songs to writing computer code. Well, now it is Google's turn. They've announced on Monday that they'll release a rival chatbot. It's called Bard. James Clayton has the details. Fascinating, isn't it? Watch this space. We'll keep you right up to date with any developments there. But let's head to America now, where France and Germany's economy ministers are on a trip. They're looking to ease US-EU trade tensions. This is over the Biden administration's Inflation Reduction Act. It is a wide-sweeping bill that offers nearly $370 billion in subsidies for green technologies in the United States. It is a move that the European Commission is concerned about because they're worried about how their green industries will compete. Well, let's speak to Michelle, who's standing by in New York. And Michelle, on the face of it, this is a good thing, isn't it? It's about investment in green, renewable technologies. But Europe and the US really kind of can't really see a consensus on how money's spent and who could lose out. Yeah, and we're going to hear a little bit more about that, one would assume, from President Biden a little later at the State of the Union address. Michelle, thank you. Good to see you. Michelle Fleury there live in New York. Remember, much more on all of those stories on the website. bbc.com/business is where you will find them. If you want to get in touch with me, you can. I'm on Twitter at BBC Ben Thompson. The latest news from Turkey and Syria coming up next for you here on BBC World News.
Hello, this is Impact. I'm Yalda Hakim. More than 5,000 people are now known to have died after the devastating earthquakes in Turkey and Syria. There's a scramble to find survivors. A little girl buried in the rubble of a collapsed apartment block is freed, but hopes are fading of finding others alive. That's all coming up here on Impact. Welcome back to Impact. We're going to look now at the situation in northern Syria, where the rescue effort is being hampered by the impact of years of military and political conflict. Some of the territory is in rebel hands outside the control of President Assad's government forces. And in those areas, the conflict has destroyed basic facilities, including hospitals. The Syrian government also blocks aid to these rebel-controlled regions, but it's coming under pressure to allow help to reach all affected areas. Here's our diplomatic correspondent James Landell with more. That was Tony Redman speaking to me there earlier from UK Med. Now, before we go to the next edition of Impact, let's just show you these live pictures from Adiana. As you can see, it's about 5:50 there, almost 6 p.m. In the evening now, and night is beginning to fall as rescue operations continue to look for people trapped under the rubble. We know that more than 3,419 people have been killed in Turkey alone, and we understand something like 15,000 people have been left injured as well. Over the border in Syria, 1,600 people are reported to have died in Syria. So lots of rescue operations continuing. Many communities here in the UK as well trying to help those affected by the earthquake in Turkey and Syria. So lots of people from Hello, this is Impact. I'm Yalda Hakim. More than 5,000 people are now known to have died after the devastating earthquakes in Turkey and Syria. There's a scramble to find survivors. A little girl buried in the rubble of a collapsed apartment block is freed, but hopes are fading of finding others alive.
Every minute, every hour that passes, the chances of finding survivors alive diminishes.
Specialist rescue teams arrive in Turkey to help local authorities to try and find those who remain trapped. That's all coming up here on Impact. We begin in Turkey and Syria, where two powerful earthquakes have killed more than 5,000 people, with many more injured and still missing. Freezing conditions mean the chances of finding others alive are rapidly diminishing. The first earthquake on Sunday had a magnitude of 7.8, the epicenter in Turkey's Gaziantep province. There have since been almost 30 other shocks in the region and a second major earthquake 130 kilometers north of the first one. These pictures show buildings collapsing in southeast Turkey. Turkey's president has declared a state of emergency, and he thanked countries around the world that had offered to help. The BBC's Richard Galpin reports. That was Timothy Whiting, a UK resident who was holidaying in Turkey, speaking to me a little earlier. Stay with us here on Impact, still to come. Continuing live coverage on these deadly powerful earthquakes, we'll be looking at the challenges faced by rescue workers operating in northern Syria, a region impacted by years of conflict. Stay with us. This is Impact on BBC World News. I'm Yalda Hakim. More now on the devastating earthquakes that struck Turkey and Syria. And we can focus on northern Syria now, where the rescue effort is being hampered by the impact of years of military and political conflict. Some of the territory is in rebel hands outside the control of President Assad's government forces. And in those areas, years of conflict has destroyed basic facilities, including hospitals. The Civilian Emergency Response Group, who operate in rebel areas, the White Helmets, said time is running out. A few hours ago, there was a moment of joy as rescue teams pulled a young girl out alive from the rubble of a collapsed building on Tuesday. BBC Arabic's Murad Shishani explains the issue having rescuers in the north of Syria. That was Murad Shishani speaking to me there a little earlier. Now, many people have lost their lives when their buildings collapsed in the earthquakes, but there are still some moments of joy when survivors are rescued. This video was filmed by the White Helmets Rescue Group, which operates in rebel-held parts of Syria. It shows a family, including a small child, trapped on the third floor of their partially collapsed apartment block. The rescue teams are able to use ladders to reach them and bring them to safety. It happened after midnight on Tuesday morning. That's almost 20 hours after the first huge earthquake. We'll be back in the next few minutes. We'll leave you with these images. Hello, this is Impact. I'm Yalda Hakim. More than 5,000 people are now known to have died after the devastating earthquakes in Turkey and Syria. There's a scramble to find survivors. A little girl buried in the rubble of a collapsed apartment block is freed, but hopes are fading of finding others alive. The international community is sending search and rescue teams to Turkey. The World Health Organization says 23 million people could be affected by the earthquakes. That's all coming up here on Impact. Welcome back to Impact. We're going to look now at the situation in northern Syria, where the rescue effort is being hampered by the impact of years of military and political conflict. Some of the territory is in rebel hands outside the control of President Assad's government forces. And in those areas, the conflict has destroyed basic facilities, including hospitals. The Syrian government also blocks aid to those rebel-controlled regions, but it's coming under pressure to allow help to reach all affected areas. Here's our diplomatic correspondent James Landell with more. That's our weather presenter, Nick Miller there. Well, let's move to another story now. And they call themselves the Warriors, 3 female cyclists who risked their lives to escape the Taliban. Now, for the first time, they've been speaking about their hopes of competing in next year's Olympic Games. Women and girls are banned from playing all sport in Afghanistan. But since arriving in the UK last November, Mina, Persia and Arifa have been training twice a week. Graham Satchell has been to meet them. Now, the largest ever collection of Johannes Vermeer paintings is going on show at the Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam this week. The 17th century master is best known for paintings such as The Girl with the Pearl Earring and The Milkmaid, which showcase his signature style of portraying intimate domestic scenes. Taco Dibitz is the Rijksmuseum's general director. He told me what makes this exhibition so special. Have a listen. That was Taco Dibitz, the director of Rijksmuseum, speaking to me there a little earlier about that Vermeer exhibition. Now, let me just show you some of these pictures that's coming in from Diyarbakir in Turkey. It's almost 7 p.m. in the evening in Turkey and in Syria. And as night falls, the rescue operations continue but become even more complicated and difficult, as we've been reporting here on the programme. The weather conditions are so difficult at the moment, freezing conditions, as the rescue operators attempt to search for more people under the rubble. But as we've also reported, it becomes even more difficult as each minute passes. We will be leaving you with these images, and Matthew will be here in the next few minutes to bring you up to date on the situation in both Turkey and Syria. Goodbye for now.
Hello, colder weather to come for those parts of Turkey and Syria.